I went running in the house, Mom, you won't believe what I just saw. And she just calmed me down and said, son, in the ancient past, there were advanced beings that visited this planet. Some of them lived on tops of mountains. And they've decided that it's in their best interest to keep us ignorant of what may have really truly happened in the ancient past, because their narrative allows for monetization on the highest scale. Their narrative allows for funding of wars on both sides. Their narrative allows for total dominance and control over the entire global population.
Billy Carson, thank you for making time to do this. I appreciate you.
Amazing. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
I want to start with 1977 in Miami, when you were walking outside and you saw some things in the sky and you came back in and had a conversation with your mom.
Oh, yeah. Are you going way back? So, yeah, 1977, man. And I know for people who are thinking, man, that's a long time ago. Well, I'm 53. So obviously I was born in 71. But in 77, we moved from Queens, New York to Opelika in Miami. Opelika is a small part of unincorporated Dade County, I believe, at the time, at least it was. Very impoverished area. But and of course back then, no TV channels, no cable TV, no tablets or phones or screens or anything. You just played outside. I'd go in my backyard because that was the safest place to play, because the front was full of a lot of danger. And we lived near the Opelika Airport, which is a small private airport, which is still functioning today. And I would watch the planes go over, prop jets. They would just, prop propeller planes go over the back of the yard as they came up in the sky. It would take them several minutes to clear the horizon. And from my perspective, I knew that they were moving fast because they had to stay in the air. But I knew also that, like, why do they move so slow from where I'm standing? And then one day when I was doing this, an object came across the backyard and it cleared the horizon, the whole backyard, in seconds, not minutes. And I was completely stunned. It was the first time it passed by was extremely fast, and all I could make out was this glowing type of elongated egg. It came back when I was turning in circles and jumping around, and it was a little bit lower this time. Now I can estimate probably like 200 meters. Completely came to a dead stop, completely silent, no noise, elongated egg, glowing like metallic, silver metallic type color, and then went out the way that it came in. And I was crazed. I running in the house. Mom, you won't believe what I just saw. I was trying to describe in my best words at that time with my vocabulary what I saw. And she just calmed me down and said, son, in the ancient past, there were advanced beings that visited this planet. Some of them lived on tops of mountains. And she said, you need to go visit Machu Picchu, which is why I did a Machu Picchu dedication in my first book that I wrote 5.5 years ago to my mom. She passed away in 2010. But I dedicated that book to her because I finally got a chance to go to Machu Picchu. And there's a photo that I took at the top when I dedicated to my mom.
It seems like ancient texts of various sorts have been referencing things like star people or things from space or gathering information from up there for a long time. And it seems like we have, as a culture, have belittled all of that into mythology. What are your thoughts on the transition into being now in a state of disbelief of anything that is not material, objective, measurable, manageable, sitting in my hand right now? Like that's what we believe. We believe in scientism, and everything else is kind of casted off into this bucket of myth. How has that affected us as a people, and what are we missing out as a people by taking that as just being like child based stories?
Yeah, well, definitely scientism without spirituality has pretty much held us back. It's put us back probably 3,000 years, to be quite honest with you, because every moment that we stay in that encapsulated mindset, we're losing decades of advancement as a race. Now we are advancing and we're moving forward, and it's a great time to be alive, but we can't negate the fact that we have been held back spiritually and consciously because two things that have happened. One thing is they have created this divide and conquer concept that they programmed into us about science and spirituality. So they've separated science from spirituality, and they have us thinking that both two things are totally separate and they're not. The second thing that they've done is they've decided that it's in their best interest to keep us ignorant of what may have really truly happened in the ancient past because their narrative allows for monetization on the highest scale. Their narrative allows for funding of wars on both sides. Their narrative allows for total dominance and control over the entire global population. And where if it was free information, freely given information and knowledge, and the understanding was universal, that particular level of control that they have put on us wouldn't even exist because we wouldn't stand for it. So they have a lot of hidden agendas behind why they put us into this framework of this scientific mindset, which completely is separate from spirituality and the science that they only want us to understand is the science that can be actually visually seen or measured, not the science that can't be seen or can't be measured yet. And not to even imagine that in the future or even right now, we can tap into it through consciousness. They're keeping it completely separate. And then to take all of the ancient star lore from all the indigenous tribes from all around the world and put it into a giant bucket of mythology also plays a part and a role in segregating our minds away from what really happened so that we can't learn from our past mistakes. Because if we truly understood what happened in the ancient past, we would basically not allow that to happen again. Humanity is like a baby. So a baby can only learn and progress from past mistakes. If a baby walks over to an electric outlet and gets ready to put his or her finger in there, the parent might smack that finger and say no. Or the baby might actually get a little shock. Either way, the baby now has a past reference point of learning and understanding that now has been gained and programmed into the brain to say, hey, if I do that, either I'm going to get a tap on my finger or I'm going to get a shock, which doesn't feel good either. So I'm going to stay away from that. So the baby now can make future decisions and walk past that electric outlet every single day without ever even thinking about touching it. Humanity is the same way. It's kind of a metaphor. So if we can really understand what happened in the ancient past, and these mythos were brought to be mostly like 70% reality, then we would learn from those mistakes. We wouldn't just write them off as old tales from people wanting to tell stories. And we would then take those as real life learned lessons and we would change our future.
What would the earliest example from your perception be of an example of they?
Well, I would say then they would be the Anuna.
And they as in the oppressor, they as in, like who is the Bilderberg Society? Who are the reptile people? Who was,
Goes beyond, yeah.
who are the Rockefellers? Like I'm still murky on who they is when we start talking about that.
If you want to go back to an ancient account, we know that Amun Ra, aka Marduk, and Marduk's name is in the Torah, his name's in the Bible, his name's in the Enuma Elish and the Seven Tablets of Creation, his name's in the Jewish American Library.org, and his name's everywhere. He was creating a pyramid war, this war for kingship over Earth, and he didn't want to leave his kingship at his appointed time. And so he started a war. That was actually the second war. He started a war to take over kingship early and a war to not leave kingship when it was his due time to get out of kingship. These kings ruled on the precession of the equinoxes. And when the equinox shifts, it's time for the next person to rule, the next quote unquote God on earth, even though they weren't creators of the universe. Well, to do this, he created a war. And in this war, he was actually losing. Now, he already had the wealth and riches of the kingdom and the majority of the planet. He decreed the wealth and the riches to his Ra Kam, Rakam. And if you look at the iteration of that word or that name over time, Kam became shield and then shields, and now it's Rothschilds or Rothschilds. So who owns $700 trillion worth of, revenue combined, whether it's real estate, land, assets, whatever? It's the Rothschild family as a whole, $700 trillion in the estimated value. And so when people say, well, how can this happen? Well, in the ancient times, once these people Egypt was overthrown, and these pharaohs were being kicked out, and these old kings and some of the old rulership was being kicked out. They ended up migrating across Arabia, migrating across up into Europe, Bosnia, all the way up into Europe, eventually mating along the way and becoming some of the royalty, these blue bloodlines that we hear of today, right? And so this is why there's a lot of Egyptian motif within those bloodlines, within the kingship of England, for example. They also have made statements in the past, they meaning the royalty, that they felt like they had the right to rule over humans. They didn't say people, they said humans. Why would you use the word humans versus people? It's almost as if they see themselves higher than us. And they believe that they're directly connected to this royal bloodline that goes all the way back to the Rakam. And so that's just one of the groups. There's probably 100 families in total, but they all believe that in some way, shape, or form, they have the right to rule over humans, and that in some way, shape, or form, their bloodlines link back to these Anuna, or also known as the Anunnaki in the ancient text.
Who are the Anunnaki?
That's a great question. I think a lot of people get it wrong. Now, Anunnaki means two things. The first thing it means is those who came from heaven to earth. Later, it was then became those who descended from a royal bloodline. And how do I know this? Because my license plate is Anunnaki on one of my cars, and they make you pull up the definition so that in the police record, when a police goes to pull up your tag, they know exactly what that tag means if it's a custom tag like that. Okay, so that's how you know it's factual. And so, but these beings were people that were actually, in my personal opinion, now there's nowhere where this is written. I'm going by connecting ancient dots. They appear to be space refugees from a region of space in the Pleiadian star system where a war broke out of some type. Golden Age came to an end, war broke out, debris flying everywhere, planets are being destroyed, moons are being destroyed, and people who had the capability to flee, they left and they got in their sky ships and they forebode. When that says in the text, it means they got the hell out of there. Some went to Orion, Aldebaran, Ursa Minor, Sirius A, B, and C. B is now a failed star. When B failed, some of them came to Earth, called the Dogon tribe called them the Nomo. Some came here ahead of the Nomo. And these people are just people with advanced knowledge, wisdom of not only spirituality, but even also all the sciences. And so they appeared godlike. And unfortunately, that turned humanity into a cargo cult. Just like we did when the United States went to the atolls in the South Pacific, those islands down there, to experiment with nuclear bombs. And they showed up on the island to islanders who had never seen any other people in history. And they were so taken aback by the technology, they worshiped the Americans as gods. And when we left, they tattooed USA on their chests with flower paint and oils. They created artificial guns with reeds from the bushes. They made an airplane out of tree limbs. They even made a fake runway, and they would line that runway every day looking up at the sky, waiting for the sky gods to return. And so humanity as a whole, in my opinion, had fallen under the same exact spell, the spell of a cargo cult, when a more advanced race of beings engaged us and we deified them.
That's pretty cool. And why would that information have been obscured or obfuscated over time? Why not continue to spread that information?
Well, a couple things happened. There were several wars on this planet, and the evidence of these wars can literally be seen and touched with your bare hands. I've been there. I've seen the explosion, the evidence of the explosion of the Pyramid of Dozier, and I've picked up the crumbled black charred stones in the debris field and looked at the destruction on the exterior. You can clearly see something struck that pyramid. Mohenjo-daro in the Indus Valley in Pakistan, there are buildings there that are now dilapidated, but those sandstone brick buildings have now been turned to glass, and the bodies of the people of that civilization are laying in the streets dead, and some of them are holding hands. Their bodies have never been scavenged by wild animals, and they are still laying there till this day. Anyone can Google Mohenjo-daro Indus Valley bodies and look up those skeletons. And when you take a Geiger counter to both places, Egypt and also to Pakistan, to Mohenjo-daro, you find the background level radiation is lower than the actual anomaly, which would be the buildings and the bodies in the street, and even some of the debris laying in Egypt, laying out in the Sahara Desert. So that stuff has a higher than background level radiation. You can measure it with a Geiger counter, which I take with me when I travel to places, just to measure and see what has been radioactive. And that just two of the places on Earth that you can find this type of destruction. And to get vitrification where you turn sand and bricks into glass, you need 3,000 plus degree temperatures. And I'm sure good old, the indigenous fires by rubbing sticks and stones together isn't going to create 3,000 degrees. So somebody had some kind of technology that was being utilized. And in the Indian betas and the Rig beta, they talk about these weapons. They talk about the Brahmahanda Astra, the Brahma Honda, and all these other incredible weapons that were weapons of mass destruction. They even had a weapon that can destroy any man on three worlds.
How literal do you think the stories from the Bhagavad Gita might be?
I think they're pretty literal. Now they've put them into a story format so that they can be almost read as as almost as a bedtime story, right? I think it's even been turned into a cartoon for in India. Children watch the Bhagavad Gita story, and they watch the other one as well. The Bhagavad Gita and there's one more, the Mahabharata. Okay, and so they watch these stories on TV as animations, even. They're great stories, but also they're stories that are literally littered with actual truth and facts. And I do believe that these were part of these Anunnaki or Nuna beings that were here. They weren't just in one region of the world, they were a global civilization. They were all over this planet. In other words, Atlantis wasn't just the ring city. There was a beautiful ring city and a capital, but that was one of many capitals and areas that were being ruled over on this planet by these people.
Who is or was Jesus Christ?
That's a great question. I mean, was I specifically there, and can I answer it as a definitive answer? No, but all I can do is speculate. Number one, I believe that Jesus Christ was a very incredible and powerful figure that brought a great, great message to humanity and became a template for us to actually follow. I believe that he was trying to teach us that God is within us, as he said that the kingdom of heaven is inside of you. He didn't say on the outside, he said inside. He also said that we should do greater things than he. Why are we not doing that? Why have we not taken on that mantle and decided to do greater things than him? We've now acquiesced and said, "Oh, he's greater than us, and we can't do anything. We just have to, you know, get underneath him." No, actually, he empowered us to do greater things than he even did. That lesson gets lost. I do believe in some way, based on the stories, that in some way he may be influenced by these Anunnaki beings, maybe the offspring, half 50-50 demigod of these Anunnaki beings, or maybe even a special incarnation of Thoth himself, which I don't think is a bad thing. I don't think it's anything that is sacrilegious or tears down the religion. I really personally believe that Jesus came here in a miraculous way, which is exactly what it says in the book. We just don't understand what way that was. I think people want to put it into a little tiny box and don't even question that. We're only hypothesizing and speculating right now. What could it have been? But I do believe that when I read the teachings of Jesus and look at other ancient texts and tablets and scriptures and papyruses from around the world, his teachings are in alignment with that. And that teaching is primarily teaching man how to rise from the darkness and to seek the light, become the light, to learn how to love, to learn how to be the ultimate form and version of love, to display and honor and revere gratitude, and to be of service to others. And if everyone on this planet did that starting right now, this planet would change in the twinkling of an eye.
Why?
Well, because we would bring back the Christ consciousness. You see, the return of Christ would be here instantaneously in our minds. The return of the Christ, I think a lot of people are waiting for a man to fly in on some kind of magical cloud and decree he's back and wave this magic wand.
We're waiting for daddy. And we do that with government. We do that with government as well.
Yes, exactly. We're always on the teat of something, you know? And I think if we realize the empowerment that had been given to us in that biblical text, the empowerment to be better people, the empowerment to love people more fervently, the empowerment to be look back at the things we did wrong and to correct ourselves of those things and do better next time. All that is self-empowerment, and the empowerment for us to realize and tap into our true gifts and powers that are already inside of us, just waiting to be opened. We all have the gifts. We have to open the packages now. to tap in, to go to inner space instead of relying on outer space. And I think that's really what it's all about.
Marianne Williams said, paraphrasing her quote, he said, "Our greatest fear isn't failing, it's that we are powerful beyond measure," something like that. Why do you think it is that humans, and I feel that resonates within myself, and I feel that I can observe the ways that I sabotage myself and I maintain a certain level of smallness because it feels safe. Why do you think, where did we download that information from and why?
From the age of 1 to 7, you are programmed and to into who you're going to be from the time after that. That literally creates your personality traits, your belief system, your complete parameters to where you would go and how far you can extend yourself inside of and outside of a box. When you're born, you're given a name, a race, and a religion, and you spend the rest of your life defending a false identity. So we have to battle all of that programming code that came in from our parents, that came in from our grandparents and cousins and sisters and nephews and uncles and school teachers and employers and everything else just keeps coming, TV, and it just keeps coming in. And it builds this framework of a concept of reality for us that in most cases isn't even real. And then we defend that false identity to the death in a lot of cases if you read history books. And so that's been to the detriment of us spiritually and consciously. And we're all guilty of it, including myself. Every single one of us is guilty of it. Instead of taking a step back and realizing, wait a second, I know that I just thought about this thing this particular way, and it made me a little uncomfortable. It made me a little scared. But let me do a thought experiment and stretch my imagination. Let me stretch my consciousness and see if I can wrap my mind around asking more questions and seeking more answers, whether it's coming from research or whether it's coming from the source, wherever, to just be open to explore more and to not put ourselves in this little box and to really understand from a scientific standpoint that we are literally connected to everything that exists within the known universe, and we're on this energetic grid together, and everything that exists is actually part of us. And that makes me feel bigger and it makes me feel stronger. It makes me feel mightier. So when you flip the switch and take a different mindset, all of a sudden your perspective of things change.
What's happening on the moon? What happened with the moon landing? What's going on? What's the dark side of the moon? What's the moon? What's going on
It
up
was
there?
an incredible place, and I know a lot of people go, "Oh man, we never went to the moon. And the moon, there's no way we could land on the moon." And I see all the fake video clips passing around, and the fake Kubrick video fact, going around about him saying, I made it all up and stuff like that. I actually have the full Kubrick video, and it's not what people actually think. I have the full video. I'm going to put that in a special podcast probably one day soon. But I did a blog called "Yes, We Went to the Moon," and "Yes, We Lied About It." And that I think that blog got like 30 million views. It went crazy viral years and years ago. And so when you look at the research in terms of the science of going to the moon, yes, it was done. Women were the calculators on the computers to actually do the calculations during the Mercury missions and even into the early Apollo missions. They called them hidden figures. These were black women that actually were called computers before computers actually even existed and before a computer was actually in the NASA building. They were the computers.
What's the relevance of them being black women?
Well, at that time, it was unheard of to have anybody of that race working inside of a place doing any actual real science. So the relevance is it must have been real science and not play science for them to actually acknowledge that and talk about it and document it. That's a thing that wasn't popular to do back then, to put people in that of color in that light. So I'm adding credibility to the fact that these calculations were really done. These women weren't just fake people that didn't exist and they decided to prop these women up and make this, a special movie about them. No, they really existed. They really did calculations, which means satellites and rockets really launched and really grabbed trajectories and launch windows. All that was really calculated. For people who are just thinking this stuff is all completely fake, you have to start connecting dots. Why would they say these particular group of people did this back then when they don't even want to put people like that in any context at all of doing anything worthwhile? For them to do that, to me, it tells me that it's a very significant moment in time, and these calculations and these launch trajectories were real. The second thing,
Specifically like a group of black women only, or was it just the relevance was like there were black women doing it and that's why they're talking about it and that was rare for that time for it to be like that? I don't understand the detail of the relevance of the black women. Was it like when you're saying, I thought I was thinking it was like some kind of like remote viewing secret co-op.
oh, no, no, you have to understand, I'm building the credibility of the calculations. So imagine you're a company that's in this era where people of color, especially women, which women have a double minority, women, white women and black women. In that era, and now you actually acknowledge that these women did something what they consider to be very special in terms of mathematics to make these calculations. They've added credibility to from my personal point of view. You don't put that group of people on a pedestal and say they were responsible for doing something when historically that's not what they typically do. So in that particular case, to me, it adds credibility that these calculations were done, these launches were done, these pre Apollo satellites were launched based on their calculations. In other words, why even bring them up? Why even say anything about them whatsoever? They gave these people actual credibility. And to me, by doing that, this entire mission, this Mercury mission, and this Mercury program, and this pre-Apollo program were 1,000% real. That's all it is. It just adds to me credibility. I look at circumstantial evidence. If you have enough circumstantial evidence, you can prove a case in any court in America. And that's one piece of circumstantial evidence. If you're a CSI agent looking for the evidence of a launch, that's one of the things that will come up in a court. It's just one of the things. It's no relevance to say black people are any more special than white people. It's about them acknowledging the people.
When you said, I wonder if it was just exclusively only black women, or was just it was relevant because there was black women doing it, and at the time that was a rare thing. And we can move on from.
They made a big movie about it. It was so-called The Hidden Figures, and my grandfather was one of the hidden figures. He helped design the actual launch tower for the very first space shuttle. And a lot of this information was kept very secret and very quiet until after, years after, decades after it all happened.
What was the movie?
Hidden Figures.
Hey, Phoenix, cool. I'll check it out.
Yeah, yeah. You can a very famous actress starred in that movie. She was the main computer. Um, I forget her name at this exact moment, but she's a famous actress. She's been in a lot of movies with Terrence Howard and so forth. But anyway, so look,
Sorry for interrupting on that. I was when you said I had this vision of like a whole fleet of black women only, and I didn't understand why what the
oh, that's what you'll see. You'll probably see about 50 black women doing all the mathematics. You can watch the movie. It's an accurate documentary as to what happened.
interesting.
You can look it up on Amazon Prime. Watch Hidden Figures. Very, very telling show. Very telling series. A documentary. So you can check it out. But anyway, so the second thing was the Van Allen radiation belt. So in the Van Allen radiation belt, Van Allen himself, which is his named after him, he discovered this radiation belt, and people were saying, "Well, it's impossible to get through the Van Allen radiation belt because you would die." He had a concern about the belt that he discovered. Brought it to the scientists. The scientists analyzed it, did some research, launched a low Earth satellite, analyzed the amount of radiation. They even blew up an actual bomb within the belt to see what would happen. It added more radiation to the belt. But through the research and study of the belt, they discovered a couple things. One thing is it only takes a couple days to get through the belt going on your way to the moon. The second thing was you would have to be in a non-protected, non-radioactive, radiation-protected vessel and sit inside the belt for quite some time before you could take in a lethal dose of radiation. The third thing is that they found that the Earth's magnetic field whips out of the Earth, and when it whips out of the Earth, it creates these gigantic openings inside the Van Allen belt, and they can actually calculate great trajectory launch windows, which these computers at NASA actually calculated. These computers were people, not computers. And so when they calculate the launch windows, they know which angle to take off when they get to max Q in the rocket and where to shoot off through the Van Allen belt to head out into deep space. As they're going towards the moon, one of the astronauts, I believe it was Buzz, says he calls back to Houston and says there's something outside our window. Where's our boosters? Well, they had been gone a long time ago, but he was trying to give them a hint there was something following them to the moon. So they saw an actual object, a technological object following them to the moon, but they got too nervous. This is many interviews you can pull up online. where they were just too afraid to announce what it was because they didn't want to get the mission canceled and abort it and have to come all the way back home. But it followed them there. The next thing is the reason why they went to the moon was there was a reconnaissance mission. When they did the lunar orbits with satellites, they discovered things up there that shouldn't be there, anomalies. And they wanted to go up there and catalog some of these things and potentially, in my opinion, bring some of these things back. So they showed a split. Some moon footage was real, some moon footage wasn't real because they couldn't show you what was really up there. And the dark side of the moon, or the opposite side of the moon, because it's not really dark, we just call it the dark side. NASA sent not NASA, I'm sorry, the military sent a mission called the Clementine mission. And the Clementine mission was a low lunar orbiting mission. And when it went to the back side of the moon, it crashed into something and never came back. Although the name Clementine is an old country song, Clementine, oh my darling Clementine, you were lost and gone forever. So they knew it was never going to come back. But it transmitted gigs and gigs of images, which anyone can download. And on those images, pre-Photoshop, without any editing or altering, you can see anomalies, things that shouldn't be on that moon surface. So for me, what it tells me is the moon itself is some type of an ancient base, a remnant of an ancient object that was put there in place, potentially in that particular orbit around this planet, in that particular way where it has that locked rotation where we only see one side. When you look at the USGS.gov deep penetrating radar images that came from the Arecibo satellite on Earth in Puerto Rico, it gives you about 30 meters deep penetration beneath the moon's surface, and you can actually see structures, huge megalithic structures beneath the surface of the moon. Without editing, without doing any fancy color enhancements or adjustments, anyone can go download these images. Chris Maroney at Mars Anomalies YouTube account did a great job showing them, showing everybody where to get them and linking to them so anyone can go and look at them for themselves. I believe that the moon is an ancient base that in some way maybe have gone through a war that spanned from Earth to the moon and all the way to Mars, the god of war. And potentially there could be people still there or utilizing it in some way, because one of the moon missions, when they were going over, Neil Armstrong says, look at those convex domes down there. I bet the people never get out. And that's on the FOIA requested black box audio and also the black box redacted text. They didn't redact that statement.
What would he mean by that? The people never get out.
When he's saying convex, now he's saying a dome. He's using a code for a dome structure down there, and he's saying the people. Now, in some way, shape, or form, he must have believed that people were underneath the surface of the moon. He said, "I bet nobody laughed in the capsule." He said, "I bet the people down there never get out," and then there was complete silence. That's crazy.
What would be your thoughts on what that is? There's people under in a dome on the moon. What is that like?
I believe it. I believe when you look at the ancient Sumerian tales, there's an account of one family. Well, they were all related, but they were distant relatives. But they were battling each other, and one family had violated some code or rule and stole the tablet of destinies, I believe it was, and they got him back. But then that group was banished to the moon in the text. They were banished to the moon for all eternity. Now that's what the text says. Could some of that be truthful? Potentially. If you look at the Indian Vedas, when they talk about the Vimanas, they had Vimanas, which were these silent flying machines that ran on a ferrofluid vortex engine, liquid mercury rotating at a high speed, an electrified torus, moving silently. They said they can take a complement of any man to the moon or any planet. So there's all this text out there where in some way these ancient civilizations claim to be able to get to the moon or banish people to the moon. So could it be that maybe generations later, there are still people there or remnants of people there? It's quite possible.
What's going on with Antarctica? And why did Buzz Aldrin, when he visited, say we're facing the ultimate evil afterwards in a tweet that was deleted, from what I heard you say?
Oh, yeah. Antarctica is an amazing place. I would really love to get Filippo Biondi's satellite that he used for the star data in Egypt and position it over Antarctica, because I think that it would be an eye-opener to discover what's there. There are pyramids, there are ancient structures, and there's probably most likely preserved technology. And the reason why I believe it's preserved is because Antarctica appears to be a continent that shifted and moved into position at a very rapid pace due to a pole shift. So the crust of the earth, where the tectonic plates meet, snapped and went and moved that landmass into that location, creating a global flood over, or maybe a potential regional flood over that landmass, which creates flash freezing. And how do we know this? Well, the ice is melting now, and they're discovering animals all the time. They do an autopsy on the animal. When they cut the animal's stomach open, there's undigested food in their stomachs, which means they were flash frozen. But that also means that the technology down there is flash frozen. The remnants of an ancient advanced civilization were also flash frozen, which is probably why they have that base down there where they have multiple countries in a no war zone all working together around this 30-meter wide opening on Google Earth. And they're researching something now for quite some time. And a lot of the rulers of the earth and presidents and so forth had gone down there, and Buzz was there at that particular time when you just brought up. And whatever meetings they had, I'm not sure exactly what it was, but he said we were facing the ultimate evil. And then he tweeted that, and they rushed him out of Antarctica and said, "Oh, Buzz is he's not feeling that well." Then they later deleted the tweet, but by then, if the internet, millions of people downloaded that already, screenshot it or whatever. So you can't erase that kind of history. But something is going on down there now. When you look into the account of the Nazis going down there into New Schwabenland and making a base down there, and supposedly they met with this advanced race of people, the Aryans down there, and they gave them the information and technology on how to build these Hanabu craft, which are these flying discs that were from the 1930s on. And Admiral Byrd went down there to inspect it under the orders of the United States. So he went down with a whole Navy crew, several fleet of ships, and they were attacked. Not only were they attacked, some ships didn't make it back. He went back home with his tail between his legs, and he said on the news that we're facing a new kind of enemy, one that can fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds. So there's something that happened down there, and then we meaning the governments of the world who run the planet, they're all down there researching it and trying to investigate it. I think maybe even a lot of these discoveries will never see the light of day. They'll end up in black budget programs. They'll end up being weaponized. And maybe in the future, they'll end up being part of some type of technology for consumers. But they're over there doing something. And there's only one base there that's not a country, and that's the Rockefeller Foundation. Very good friends with Rothschilds.
Are there aliens among people? Who are people? Who is the race of people?
I believe that they are aliens. I believe that they're these some of these Anunnaki. See, Anunnaki means people that come from any planet. There's no specific one planet. It's a generalized term, like as if you and I just left Earth and went to Mars, and we met somebody that was born on Mars, and they said, "Where are you guys from?" We would say that we're Earthlings. I wouldn't say that I'm Billy from Miami, Florida. I would say Earthling, generalized term. So these Anunnaki people, they're just people that came from somewhere else. Now, when I met with Major Ed Dames, one of the teachers of Project Stargate that used to capture intelligence through remote viewing for the CIA. You can look it up on Wikipedia. They made a movie after him called The Men That Stare at Goats. He taught 2 classes. You could probably still find those remnants of those web pages online in Orlando, Florida. Both years I went, 16 hours of teaching and training directly by Major Ed Dames himself. After the second class, I stayed there with him for hours talking with him and asked him some questions. He told me that in Antarctica, there is a group of beings, he said, a group of beings that can come and go as they please, and no government of the world can stop them. That is his exact word for word quote. Okay? So it tells me that they know who these people are, they meaning the governments and the leaders, and they're in some type of collaboration or collusion with them, or not really quite sure. Maybe they're just allowing them to do what they do. But according to Major Ed Dames, he says, nobody can stop these people. There's nothing we can do if we decided to even stop them from doing anything that they want to do. Now, obviously, clearly, they're not trying to hurt us. But Buzz did make that tweet. Maybe he misunderstood or misinterpreted, or maybe what he saw the Americans trying to do, maybe, or the other research bases trying to do, maybe he saw them trying to co-opt the advanced knowledge and weaponize it for us, for military use and monetization. We don't really know what the evil actually was, but There's so much you can speculate on, but it's an incredible story.
Who are reptile people? When people refer to the concept of reptile people, what does that mean?
Well, I know some people want to laugh and say that sounds like a farce, but when you look into the ancient texts, you find that there were people that were reptile-like beings that were bilateral, bipedal beings, just like us. And the culture that we found in Iraq is called the Ubaid culture. Ubaid. They found remnants of their cities and civilization, and hundreds of statuettes have been discovered, which are now in the museums. And they even were able to establish that these people had a monocle type society based on their clothing. Some had, long robes, short robes. Some had staffs. Some were naked. Those would be the poor people. Women were breastfeeding babies, but they looked like reptiles. They had reptilian heads, reptilian scales on their skin. They were reptilian people by any account, and in some way, shape, or form, they died out, or maybe they just left. No one is really sure. They probably made it. Maybe some people say they made it and bred into humanity, and that bloodline is still on the planet till this day. It's not really too clear, but in some way, they were here. Now, in the Nag Hammadi scripts, they also talk about these reptilian beings, and they say that they have the capability of hovering in between dimensions and attaching themselves to a human's consciousness and kind of almost like remote controlling them or creating angst and anger and so forth within them. That's in the Nag Hammadi. So, two different accounts, one more spiritual, multidimensional, and one more physical.
Is all of this happening on this plane of reality, the way that most humans perceive things through? Or is some of this potentially other dimensional?
It could be both. It could be third dimensional reality where things are engaging us within this dimension, but also it could be that some of this stuff came from a higher dimension or a different dimension. There are so many dimensions compactified, which is actually a real word for people who like to tell me my words aren't
I
real.
wasn't sure.
Compactified, real word in science. Last time I said compactified, there were like 1,000 messages. That's not even a real word. I'm like, I learned that in a science class. It's a real word. And so all the dimensions are compactified on top of each other, and each one is at a specific frequency. Now, what if you and I were able to access or understand or encode the exact frequency of the next dimension, which is right here in this room with us, and we can literally create a technology that can shift our frequency into that frequency so we can match it and step right in. So, could there be beings from different dimensions that have obtained the subatomic vibration or frequency of the third dimension of this universe and said, let's pay them a visit? Could that be things that are responsible for paranormal activity, seeing ghosts, all that kind of crazy stuff? Or could it be that they actually came here and took on bodies? In the Emerald Tablets, they claim to have taken on bodies and engaged mankind. So there's all of these different potential ideas and concepts. Could they be third dimensional? Could they be multidimensional? Could they be just spiritual beings, non corporeal that then somehow and talk to us through dreams and visions? In actuality, it could be all three. There's so much going on.
I'm looking up the quote that I heard from Nikola Tesla. It was, if you want to find, I think I might have found it here. If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. I think that is probably something that I've heard you say in the past is something along the lines, I have my notes here, but it's something along the lines, actually I have it written down the way you said it. The deeper you go into antiquity, the more perfect the construction was. And I think that there's something to that in association with Nikola Tesla's quote, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. It seems like we're starting to rediscover some of those ancient technologies.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, we are rediscovering them. In my book, The Compendium of the Emerald Tablets, there's a quote in there from Thoth where he's talking about utilizing basically what he's saying is photons, which is light, and cymatic frequencies, vibration, to create solid matter or manifest solid matter. He was a great alchemist. Now, if you don't know anything about that happening in science, you might think like, man, that sounds like fantasy. But then all of a sudden, just 3 years ago, 3 years, Two scientists took photons and cymatics and created solid matter in the laboratory. So modern science, again, has just replicated what was written 36,000 years ago.
And they created new matter. You can't destroy or create matter. They created matter 3 years ago.
3 years ago, they were able to use light and frequencies to literally manifest some solid matter. Now, a very small amount, but yes, they did it. They made solid matter. You can look it up on physics.org. It was an incredible, incredible experiment.
Yeah, the frequency stuff, I wonder how much of this, like, what does all this mean to a normal kind of like plebeian layman person going to work, drinking a Coors, just trying to, you know, get the rent paid and have a good time? What does this mean to them?
It means that we're living in an amazing universe, and it means that what appears to be this drinking a course life, wake up and grind all day, drink a beer, lay back down, do it all again. It's not the real living. It's not real living, right? That's like an NPC, non-player character. They have us playing these programmed roles like rats in a maze. When the reality of what's really going on around us is so amazing and astonishing, it would blow our minds on a day-to-day basis to realize how much is out there, how much we just don't know. But also for the people who have the futuristic mindsets, when I make a statement like they just created solid matter from lights and vibrations, a person with a futuristic thinking mind can begin to get all kind of downloads as to how and what kind of technologies can now be developed from that. And those become the minds that help build and create the bigger, brighter future, right? All of a sudden, you don't need a construction crew because a building can manifest itself based on programmed matter. You see? All these kind of things start happening. A building that gets damaged can repair itself. You don't need to hire a team or crew to come out and fix it anymore. All these things begin to happen. So it's just it's amazing when you can see these kind of experiments happen and then extrapolate 30 years into the future, 50 years, 100 years into the future, and see, envision what kind of technologies can come out of it that can literally lift the burden from humanity and change the way we live.
You clearly have like some like lights have been turned on you in a really major way. And it seems like there's been like, how would you prescribe that to another person? Because I witness, and it could be projection, be open to that, but something that seems a little bit like NPC, like non-player character type vibes. Oftentimes I go to, go football game or something, and it's okay. It's beautiful. And I don't have any sense that I'm more or less, or I think it's, I'm literally just witnessing myself through the eyes of another being.
Yeah.
How, if you were to prescribe some recipe to kind of turn the lights up a little bit inside of another human being, what would be your prescription?
Well, the first thing I think is that we have to understand that the most powerful force in the universe is love. That really is the most powerful force. So we have to learn how to get ourselves into the gratitude and love frequency. To get to gratitude first, and then you can experience the love. And so, for the first thing to do, and I know this may for a lot of people might sound kind of corny, but recently I was doing some shadow work on myself, and I would write down a list of things or people that I felt had wronged me in some type of a way, and what happened, and how pissed off I got about it, which is me just punishing myself because the only person that can hurt you is yourself when you're angry.
That's correct.
And then to analyze that they are just another reflection of me, like the ancient Mayans say, "In lakek alakin," I am another you. And to now to have a meditation about the situation and to go into this forgiveness mindset and feel the forgiveness for the person, move from forgiveness into this gratitude feeling where you can feel the actual gratitude for everything that is, everything you have, and all the experiences that you've been through, even with what they've done to you, and to feel the thankfulness because that is now going to help you grow, and then move from gratitude and then actually feel the love for the person. Wow, powerful.
That's the teachings of Christ.
There you go. That's it. When you do that, you now shift. See, I'm getting shaky. It's a shift.
I wonder if that is what keeps humans in their corporeal form. Sorry to use a pedantic word for being in the body, but I wonder if it's the bondage and the resistance and the ancestral contractions and traumas and the things that we hold that keeps us in this physical biological system, and that as you release and come into a place of deep empathy and forgiveness and love and compassion and light, I wonder if perhaps that's the journey into, what you could call like bodhisattva or something of the sort, where eventually it's like you get to choose to be in the body, or you can come back and be a Christ type figure, but you kind of transcend the game. And I feel like most of us in this physical form, a billion percent, myself included, are in this system now actually because there's still contraction to process and integrate and open up to greater amounts of love. Does that make sense?
Oh, I love it. You hit it right on the head. That was beautifully said, man. Beautiful. You hit it right on the head, man. I mean, in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, he talks about the missions that he goes on to help teach humanity on various different races of beings on different worlds, he says, rise to the heights and to seek the light and to become the light. And in this one situation, he ends up transcending into another a place called Shambhala, like this heaven where his ancestors are located. And they gave him a choice where they said, you can stay here and you can party, you can not party, but the word was celebrate with us. And he said, no, I'm going back. There's more work to do. So I agree with you. It aligns with what the ancients were talking about within those verses. The fact that at some point you become an ascended master and you do have this opportunity to kind of decide, as Thoth says, he has the ability now to incarnate at will on and in any plane he desires. He's talking about even going into different dimensions.
And I wonder if perhaps the desire for ascension actually creates limitation and distance between you and that. Like, I wonder if perhaps to truly come into acceptance for everything that is, to really truly come into love and acceptance, compassion and forgiveness for every absolute fucking detail of what is now, to have no desire for anything else at all.
Yeah.
From there, that opens up into like graduation.
Right. Yeah. If you're focusing on, hey, I'm going to ascend today, I'm going to get to the next level today. Ah, when you ask for wisdom, you're going to be put into a situation. Universe is going to put you in a situation where you're going to have to act and use real wisdom to get out of a problem. If you're asking and looking and seeking peace, you're going to be in a situation where there's zero peace, and now you have to find the peace.
Yeah, my feeling is a lot of what's happening with all this kind of external stuff is actually just a reflection of the internal technologies that we have access to. And I have a feeling that presently we're in this internal technological revolution. And I think that AI and a lot of people shifting towards spirituality and people being enamored by ayahuasca retreats and darkness retreats and all these different like inward journeys, I feel like we might be coming back to some of these ancient technologies, and we've had them with us all along, and it's always been inside of us, is my
It's
feeling.
always been all of our gifts are there. The junk DNA is not junk. you know, it's up to us to react.
What is junk DNA?
Well, they try to tell us it's junk. That's a word salad to program us into believing that part of us is worthless. But if you start looking into the DNA and the junk DNA, these are the DNA nodes that are actually disconnected, or they're claiming they're disconnected in the body for all these generations. Like literally, since I was a kid, I've been told that just junk DNA was worthless. Even in the Encyclopedia Britannica in the 1980s. Come to find out now, they're realizing the junk DNA has real function and function inside the body. It really does have tasks that it does. We have been disconnected from it spiritually and consciously, just like we've been disconnected from our own our magnetite crystals in our brain. We have billions of magnetite crystals that orient themselves to Earth's magnetic field, yet we can't navigate Earth's magnetic field, but we should be able to. In some weird way, we've been distanced from all these innate gifts and technologies built into the human avatar body. We've got to get back into that. We have to tap back in. We have to go back to inner space.
I remember, we'll wrap up because you have to go. That if I remember correctly, and I'll have to research this afterwards, but play, I believe, activates some of this, what we refer to as junk DNA. I'm actually trying to look it up right now. But let's see here. Play is the language of the body that speaks directly to our cells. What we once called junk might be a symphony waiting for the right frequency. And I'm trying to do research as we're talking, which is not the best time to do it. I appreciate you, man. So you have, I know that you have some trips that I'm actually really enamored by and want to learn more about. You have trips going to Turkey, and you have some trips coming up. What's the deal with that?
Yeah, great trip coming up to Turkey. We're going to go visit old ancient Mesopotamia. People don't realize Mesopotamia runs all the way up into Turkey. We're going to go to Derinkuyu, Karahantepe, Göbekli Tepe. And those areas, when I was there last year, they're still uncovering more. They started digging new areas. They found more pillars sticking out of the ground. It's a massive area, not just the circles you see in the documentaries. It's huge, almost as far as the eye can see. It's going to take generations to dig this thing out. But we love to take people there to see these sites and go down into these underground cities that interconnect to dozens of underground cities throughout the region and just show you the advanced level of building and construction techniques. And then also, that's September. In October, we're going to take people to Egypt on an amazing 12-day tour of Egypt. And they're going to see the most incredible things that they would never see if they were just going to see it with a standard guide. And we're going to go beneath the bedrock. We're going to go about 65 meters beneath the surface of the pyramid. And we're going to explore down there. And I'm going to take them to several other underground areas beneath other pyramids and show them that they all are interconnected across hundreds of miles. It's going to be a great, great tour.
Amazing. I appreciate you very much. Thank you all for tuning in. That is it. That is all. I'll see you next week.